I hope you guys like that. I made that little animation since we haven't had the starfall yet, and that's kind of what everybody's been expecting, I assume. However, we are in the middle of the first Revelation event, and I'm a little disappointed that not more people have discovered, because I think it's pretty obvious. We all kind of probably expected, teaching the how the events in Revelation would follow through, that they would come up as, I started out with, it's really 8:6, but the first atom bomb goes off, and I mentioned that there was no star that fell and that kind of thing. Here, let me just, I can just move that down. So I said there was no star that fell and that kind of thing, and then the second one was the trumpet judgment, everybody says, was the meteorite, or great burning fiery mountain and all that kind of thing. However, there was a number of things mentioned, and it's just an assumption. I said that would fit with the seals in chapter 6 of Revelation, all that, because I've taught all that in great detail. But it didn't seem to come about in that order. Even though that was the logical order, what we actually had was this event in Revelation 18:23. I realize I'm off a verse there on that chart because I use a For Our Fenton Bible, and their verses don't line up exactly. So we are seeing what it says is all nations deceived by sorcery. Okay, there you go. And this word sorcery comes from the word porneia, or pharmakia, I should say, uh, which is from 5331, 332, and 333 in the Greek. And we're looking at my chart. I've taught this many times before. But it refers to medication, by extension, magic or sorcery, literally or figuratively, a druggist or a pharmacist or poisoner, because that's what drugs are, and by extension, a magician. So there's three words used four times, and the four verses they're used in is over here in these verses here, 21:8 and 22:15. And then in 9:20, judgment on people who commit murder, sorcery, fornication, theft. And if you're reading that, they're talking about demon worship. These three frogs are obviously demons, and they're mentioned again in chapter 16, I think. So I identified these as cabals. And of course, that's who's running the world at the moment, because the murder, of course, is your, here, let's just move over here. So I looked up all the terms where the murder was used and that kind of thing. And there's your words. The source of the murder is the devil. And the murders in Revelation, like it says, are primarily blamed on the great whore in chapter 17, called Babylon the Great, which is then called this great city that dominates over the kings of the earth. And they're committing wars for gain, in other words. So war for profit, but of course they're committing murder if it's a war for profit, unless there's a legitimate reason for us. And then the theft is due primarily through the banking cabal. So like I said, there's four cabals. One of them is this sorcery cabal, which is the pharmaceutical industry. So this is a worldwide pharmaceutical deceit, if you're looking at it, or a hoax. And the funny thing is, we're looking at a worldwide pharmaceutical hoax at the moment, because we have all these doctors that say, well, things aren't the way they're being promoted on TV. Well, obviously, who commits all these frauds on TV? Who's committing all these frauds in banking industry? And who's committing all these frauds in the war industry? You see, and then I got on here this fornication. I said, well, if you look through all the words here, and I'm a little trouble with that, but I guess I'm just going too far there. So if you look at all the words under fornication, basically said, well, there's three different types. If you look at all the words, look at how it's used. There's sexual, which everybody thinks of, but actually there's spiritual, which is idolatry. So this image worship, remember in chapter 13, we're going to worship this image. So that's idolatry. So it's a spiritual thing. False teaching is teaching in the church, and then connecting your church to the state, which is what all your churches do, whether they make a corporation or a 501c3. Either way, they become tax exempt when they were simply, as a real church, they're not taxable. Under the Constitution, they're simply not taxable. You don't have to go get tax exempt because you're not taxable. But tax exempt is something that the government gives you, where being non-taxable is something you have according to your rights under, which are defined in the Constitution, or some of them are. Let's put it that way. So the all the Constitution is really saying there is they're just defining certain things that you tell the government. If you are in the government and you do any of these things, heaven help you, because we're just making it really plain that this is treason against the people if you commit any of these acts. So you're violating the Constitution. There's going to be some repercussion to that. But unfortunately, the people that go to church don't seem to know any of it, so it doesn't matter. And then you have fornication for gain, which we were just talking about. People that wars for oil, and then they seize the gold and silver in countries they conquer, and the arms sales, so the military-industrial complex. Like Libya, they stole their clean water. That's some of the cleanest water on the planet. Well, unfortunately, they don't have it anymore. And then governments basically hold people in a perpetual bondage. And they can, CIA, of course, can torture and imprison people without trial. And, of course, if you have committed any crimes that they defined as, so they can hold you without trial on certain things. You see that on TV, whatever. So there you go. I don't want to go through all this again. But this is on this chart, Revelation 9, Judgment Begins, under my charts on my channel at angloisrael.com. So I'm going to start using that little logo now. I don't know what else to say. Like I said, we're about 3 years in approximately, so we got another 6 months. So as 6 months, we'll go from this pharmaceutical deceit to more deceits, regardless of what people say, which is why they're all getting removed from YouTube and they're losing their channels and so forth. Because once you start pointing out using certain terms, which they're just using, AI technology to watch all these channels and pick out all these words. I don't know if you noticed it, but on people's videos, you have a transcript available right on the right-hand side of the video. Actually, the transcript button, I think, is below, and then the transcript pops up on the right side. And I think you can even change languages on it or something, or maybe they're planning on doing that. But so they're using their technology to capture all those words that go on that transcript and creating the transcript for you. But that's for them, because then what they can do is use that transcript to use their algorithm to look for specific words. And then if you have a video that has all these specific words tagged, then boom, you just pop up, and then they got to all your videos go over to these guys, where they sit here and decide whether they want to censor you or not, or kick you off, or just ban you for a week or whatever they do. Try to get you stay in line. Well, I just teach scripture and try to stick with that. Point is, you see a lot of people talking about Revelation. Maybe it's we're seeing some of the events in Revelation, but no one seems to know what the events are. I've already gone into just extreme detail on this. I spent 10 years on it, so if anybody wants to know, I've already got the video. They can just look at it. But And then there's a bunch I don't even have on YouTube. Occasionally people want all my videos, so I give it to them if that's what they want. And I have it available on thumb drives, which is really the best way to do it. Don't even need a computer. You can just put thumb drives right on your TV. So that's a great way of sharing things that would otherwise get censored. So you don't actually have to put the video on YouTube, but you can talk about it and that kind of thing, and then just send them the video in the mail, which is really the best way to go about it. You can get a 128 gig thumb drive that will just plug into your TV for $20 or less these days. So it's hard to beat. You can put hundreds of videos on 128 gig drive, so you can share many, many hours of things. So all my stuff fits on something less than that even. But I'm just really surprised. This stuff on judgment, the people that are judged, and why I think people should look back over these charts. And this is just the top of this judgment begins, hour of judgment begins. Now, the concept is that, it's an hour of judgment, so when Christ returns at the end of the 7-year period, it's only going to take him an hour to do what he's going to do. Yeah, an hour a day or whatever. It's not going to take much time. He's just going to come back and then, boom, whatever, all the things he said he was going to do, it's discussed in great detail. He's just going to wrap it all up. His whole thing takes an hour or whatever. And then he's done, and he gets rid of all the evil, and that's kind of that. So it's pretty interesting, but you have to be one of these people, the way I look at it, that he's going to protect and that kind of thing. So you definitely want to learn what Revelation is all about, what it's really telling you. But it's discussing World War III here. And this meteorite, it's just speculation. My thing I said on the false flag, the first atom bomb, it's described in Zechariah chapter 4. There's no star fell, so, but something's going to happen that's described as a nuclear bomb going off in the city. That's just the way it's described, so it's just the way I teach it. And if it's a meteorite or whatever, and then you have more bombs, and then of course, you have all this debris in the atmosphere. You have the moon turning to blood. That's what I said. That's the way it's blood and hail. That's when you have blood and hail. That's when you have a nuclear bomb. Well, a lot of people just don't get all that, but whatever. Still, it was just an assumption that was going to be the first event. Actually, we're in the first event. We're halfway through the first event. Approximately, it should all wrap up in 6 months or less. And then we'll go into the second 3.5 period, where we should be in chapter 13 by then. And I always said, well, you'll recognize it when you see it. But then people didn't recognize it. So I'm like, I don't know what to say. All I can do is just teach all this stuff if people get it. Not enough have, but we do have a lot more people speaking about how they think that events are happening now or tied to Revelation somehow. You guys should just send them my videos and let them discuss it. I've been around with some other pastors talking to them about it, and they get it, of course. Most pastors would if you have enough time to discuss it. That's the big thing. But I don't know what to say. We're here, and so the events are happening. Of course, I do a lot of teaching people how to do off-grid solar and other things, survival type things, but we're almost a little late on that now. In fact, for solar people, if you haven't already got your panels going up or bought and ready to be installed, 6 months isn't much time. You need a good bit of lead time to get your equipment, get everything laid out, and then you got to kind of work the bugs out of your installs. Pretty much, it's very difficult to get an install to go in. Everything's up and running as planned day one. That's the idea, but it doesn't always happen that way. So generally, equipment maybe doesn't come in time, and all kinds of, especially now, because things are getting slowed down, shipping and manufacturing or whatever, and people don't have things in stock necessarily. So if you, like I said, if you haven't already planned on all that stuff, which we've talked about before, you should get ready for the events, and you should be one of these people in Revelation chapter 7 that get the seal because they've studied all this and blah, blah, blah. So what else is there to say? I don't know. But I appreciate you watching, and just gonna, I don't know how many more videos. I don't, like I said, I didn't have really any plan, but I guess if I'm still here and the first event happens, I guess I'll come back and explain to people that that was the first event or the second event and the third event and so forth. I guess I'll just come back and do a video and tell them, well, that's it. You should see it when it happens, and it just happened. And if you have to do that, I don't know what to do. So thanks for watching. I'll put this up, and I hope it edifies someone.